Well, good evening, everybody. So we left off with King Parikshit fasting to death, 7 days left to live. And he wants to know, how do you face death? And the Bhagavatam is essentially the entire text, the Bhagavata Purana, 18,000 verses, is a response to that question. So let's just remind ourselves quickly of his questions, right? There he is sitting there. And all the sages have assembled, big event, it's happening. He's in his loincloth, pronounced the kingdom, handed everything over to his son, gave up his beloved wife, because he's going to die in 7 days. So what's the point in clinging to your attachments to the last minute? If it is the case that your mind at the moment of death is a major determinant on your next birth, then there's no point clinging to things of this life, because it's finished. You got 7 days. You need to prepare for your next situation. So his first question is to the sages. He says, therefore, we're just going over where we finished last class. With full faith in you, O learned ones, I submit to you this most worthy query. From all those duties that are to be performed by everyone, right? Especially the king. He has to perform his own kingly dharmas, but the main dharma of the king is to make sure the citizens in the kingdom are following their dharma. That's an enormous dharma, to make sure that everyone's following the Vedic dharmas. So there's so many duties. Imagine the duties of a king. So from all of those that are to be performed by everyone, right? Even if you're not a king, but you still have dharmas, duties to your family, to your children, to your friends, to your people in your neighborhood, and so forth, to animals, so many duties, to the environment. What is the optimum duty that should be performed specifically by those about to die? All those other duties pertain to life. While you're living, you have your families, you have your various relationships, you have your various activities, professional dharmas. We know, of course, that dharma is duty. I'm going to be using the word dharma for duty. But what about when you're about to die? Because all those things that you do in life now, all of a sudden become null and void. They become redundant. So now what? What's the dharma of preparing for death? When the dharmas of life are no longer relevant, how are they replaced at the moment of death? What then becomes the dharma? So what is the optimum duty that should be performed specifically by those about to die? Please give this your full consideration. That's his first question, his primary question. And then remember, Shuka comes in and he's a young boy and he's 16 and all the sages recognize him, that he's the one who is most qualified to answer the question. He then welcomes the king, does his namahas, gives him a nice seat, all the formalities, and then repeats the question, except he phrases it differently. Here's how he phrased it. Once the Sukha writes, his first question was, what is the dharma of those about to die? And now, as Shuka is seated, he sort of breaks that down into a number of sub-questions. Therefore, I ask of you the most eminent of gurus among yogis. Right? He's not just flattering him. Now, all the great sages in the assembly had recognized Shuka as the greatest. It was them that had welcomed Shuka. So therefore, he's the most eminent of gurus among the yogis. And here is how he begins his questions to Shuka. What is the means to perfection? How do you become perfect? How do you become a perfect being while you're still alive? What is perfection? Basically, what's the point of life? And how do we perfect that purpose of life? What should be done at every moment by a person in this world about to die? Because we never know when we're going to die. He's been actually blessed from a certain point of view, and that he's been informed about when his death is going to be. We don't have that blessing. So we keep thinking, oh, I've got time. I'm young, I'm a student, I'm young, I'm not, I'll do it later. Later on in life, I'll get more serious, my spirituality. So we tell ourselves these stories, but we don't know. So therefore he says, what should be done at every moment? What should we be doing at every moment with our minds? What is the purpose of having these minds which think, which have free will, which look out at the world and make decisions about who am I? What am I going to do today? What am I going to do in life? What is my goal? These kinds of questions. What's the optimum thing one can do with that mind? What should be done at every moment by a person in this world about to die? Okay, and what should be heard? What should we put into our minds through the ears? What mantra should be chanted, right? What should to fix the mind, we need the mantra. As in Patanjali, Ishvara comes as mantra. So what mantra? There's so many mantras. Which one should be chanted? And what action should be performed, O Master? What should be remembered? What should we remember means what should we keep in our mind all the time? What should we fill our minds with? That's memory. When we remember something, it means a certain thought comes into your mind. So what thoughts should we bring up into our minds and keep them there? What kinds of thinking should we engage in? What should be worshipped? And please tell me what should be avoided. 8 questions. Okay? Means to perfection. What should be done at every moment by a person about to die? What should be heard? What mantra should be chanted? That's 4. What action should be performed? What should be remembered? What should be worshipped? What should be avoided? And previously he said, what is the dharma of one about to die? Which is basically the same thing here. What should be done at every moment by a person about to die? So these are the questions then that Parikshit poses to Shuka, great sage, and Shuka then is very happy. And he, because the genuine sage is happy when students ask real questions, real meaningful questions about ultimate truths, not just some trivial chitter-chatter. So therefore, Shuka says, this question is posed for the welfare of people, the real welfare of people. It's excellent. It's appreciated by those who know the Atman. Those who know the Atman, they like this kind of talk. They appreciate this kind of dialogue, this kind of interaction, this kind of questioning. They're not interested in just mundane chatter, and they don't engage in mundane chatter. And from everything that is useful for people to hear, it's the most worthwhile. There are many useful things to hear, right? How to stay alive, how to keep warm, how to feed your body. But this is the most worthwhile. Why? Because it pertains to the eternal soul. Everything else pertains to it's worthwhile, right? Obviously, it's worthwhile to maintain our bodies and nourish ourselves and those sorts of things and clean ourselves. But those are temporary things. This is the most worthwhile. Okay? So then he goes on and he says that bit about how for most people, prime of life is carried away by sexual intercourse when you're young, and then sleep in the night. You waste half your life right there. And then striving for wealth and maintaining one's body during the day. For most people, that's their life. They work, they try to, make money, pay the bills, maintain their families, have some sex at night, and sleep. And that's it. They go a little recreation now and then. Most people are obsessed with body, children, and wife and husband. They're obsessed with their families. That's their whole universe. That's all that's really important to them. But these are like illusory soldiers. They're perishable. They can die at any moment. They can leave you at any moment. But Shuka says one does not perceive their demise even while actually perceiving. Even when we're in our family situations, we don't realize how it's all being taken away. Our grandparents are getting old. Our parents are getting old. Or if their parents or children are getting old and getting ready to leave us. So all of this. So therefore now to answer the question, therefore, O son of Bharata, that's Parikshit, grandson of Arjuna, son of Bharata. Bharata was a previous king in the lineage. So all the members of the lineage are, in that sense, sons of Bharata. So therefore, one desiring freedom from fear, right? Because we're fearful. We're going to die. We're going to get old. We're going to lose our wealth. We might lose our family. So we're always fearful because we don't know at any second. So one desiring freedom from fear should hear about, glorify, and remember Hari. He is Bhagavan, Ishvara, the soul of everything. And here we connect this background story to our course on Ishvara. Okay? So now we have Ishvara in real life, not just theoretical, philosophical Ishvara, not just a Brahman of the Upanishads, not just, yoga where you fix your mind on Ishvara to experience your Atman. Now Ishvara in his own right. Not of the debates with the Buddhists, isn't there, Jain, Mimamsa? We did all that. Now, what about those who accept Ishvara in real life and consider attaining Ishvara to be the ultimate goal of human life? How about that? That's what we're going to look at now. Those, the theists, the bhaktas, the devotees, who consider this to be the ultimate goal of life. So therefore, and the Bhagavata is that genre of text, right? Bhagavata assumes, okay, you read the Upanishads, you've studied Nyaya, you've gone through the debates, you've gone through the arguments, you know there's an Ishvara. Now, who is this Ishvara? How can we know him? How can we dedicate our life? And not only how, but the goal is to do that, right? This is the goal. He answers here. One desiring freedom from fear should hear about. So what we're going to look at some of the stories of Ishvara, and that's what it means by we read them. But back then they would hear them because we got literature, we had the printing press. They didn't have the printing press back then. So how did they get the access to the stories that we are going to read? They heard about them, glorify and remember them. Remember Hari. He is Bhagavan, Ishvara, the soul of everything. Bhagavan, Ishvara, Brahman is all going to coalesce into Krishna. Krishna is Ishvara, the creator of everything, is Bhagavan, that supreme being with forms and names, is that Brahman of the Upanishads that is the source of creation. Indeed, the perfection of life for a person. What is the perfection of life? According to the Bhagavata Purana and many Indian traditions, what is the goal of life? Why are we alive? Why are we? Why are we rather than not? Why do we exist rather than not exist? What is the answer there from the Bhagavatam? The perfection of life for a person, whether through the paths of Sankhya or Yoga, whichever path one takes, path of metaphysics, Sankhya, the gunas, path of Yoga, fixing the mind, whether through the performance of duty, karma yoga, the Gita, we didn't look at that too much, but, acting in the world without attachment to the fruits. In any of those ways, or through knowledge, cultivating knowledge of the nature of Brahman and so forth. What is the goal of it all? What is the perfection of all of that? Is to remember Narayana at the end of life. Okay, Narayana is Viṣṇu. And now we're going to look at Viṣṇu in the form of Krishna. But are we clear? The Bhagavatam, the beginning chapter, we're book 2, chapter 1, right at the beginning of the text, Parikshit's questions. Questions are Shuka, and the questions are, what is the goal of life ultimately? All those questions, the 8 questions, are what should we do with our mind? Right? The goal of life means we are thinking entities. What should we be thinking about and striving for? What should be our goal? And the goal is the result of our thinking, the thinking about what life is, who we are, what the purpose of it all is. So from that kind of thinking comes action, and then from action comes, we direct our life in a certain way. And the text says the whole point of human life, the way we're different from animals, is that the purpose of human life is to think of God at all times, dedicate everything to God in any of these different ways, whether through any of the yoga paths, is to remember Narayana at the end of life. Okay, so goal of life is Viṣṇu. Narayana is the name for God. Bhagavan, Ishvara is all in I guess our English language. It's all God. We may have terms like the absolute or the Lord or God. We have different terms in English. So Brahman, Ishvara, Bhagavan, all the same thing. So we are now going to look at, having done all that hard work, establishing that there is Ishvara, locating Ishvara in the form of Brahman in the Upanishads, looking at all the sort of the responses to the non-theists, how the bhaktas, Nyaya, they're bhaktas, they typically the Nyayas are devotees of Lord Shiva. All that work in defending the existence of using inference, not just quoting scripture. We've done all that work. But now what does Ishvara look like in the day-to-day practice of Hindus? Right? We're not going to get too much into the actual details of rituals and pujas and temple worship, but we are going to look at when Ishvara enters the world. And perhaps the most beloved of all of those manifestations of Ishvara in the world is Sri Krishna. So today we're going to look at the birth of Lord Krishna. And then the next couple of sessions, I think we only have 2 more, some of his most beloved activities that lie at the core of Krishna devotion. By the way, this picture behind me, in case you ever wonder, that's all Krishna's activities from Krishna's life. It's hand-painted, a recent painting from East India, Orient, silk. And this is Krishna and the gopis, his beloved consorts, and then the various childhood pastimes of Krishna. But we'll talk about that now, but let's start with the birth. So we'll bring up our screen, and we're now book 10. The whole of book 10 of the Bhagavata is dedicated to Lord Krishna's birth. So there's 12 books in the Bhagavata. So here we are, okay? Krishna is about to enter into the world, our human world of space and time. Even though he's beyond Prakriti, as Patanjali says, and as the Upanishads say, and as everybody said, Nyaya, he's beyond. But that doesn't mean he can't enter into Prakriti. Just like Christians believe that God is, in the form of Christ, is made flesh. So it's not quite the same thing, because at least the Bhagavatam doesn't say Krishna takes flesh, but he enters in his divine form into the world. Well, let's see what it looks like. Chapter 3. In due time, an extremely auspicious moment, right, the constellation, Remember the star of Bethlehem in the Christian story? The three wise men followed the star. So there was this like sense that they were able to read the heavens, and they followed the star. They knew something very special had happened. So not quite like that, but maybe that gives you some parallel sense. So in due time, an extremely auspicious moment, endowed with all good qualities. So astrologically, are the most auspicious combination of the stars in the heavens. At that time of Krishna's birth, the constellations and the stars were all favorable. In other words, the whole universe is welcoming God as God descends into the universe, the supreme divine being. Remember, the universe is just a manifestation of God. It's just a Shakti. So when Krishna enters into his own created universe, the universe welcomes him. And how do you welcome him if you're a universe? Well, first of all, you align all the stars in the most auspicious possible way. And specifically, the constellation was Rohiṇī, which is the name of they had 27 constellations. And we had in the West, we had our 12 borrowed from the Greeks. There are 12 constellations, they had 27. And this is the most auspicious, the constellation of Rohiṇī, presided over by Brahma, who was the foremost of the celestials. So most auspicious. The directions were clear, heavens were clear, welcoming God into the universe. The sky was covered with clusters of visible stars. Right, the stars all shone to their very, very best, and everything's animated in the Indian universe. We may not see the animation; we just see rocks and dead planets out there because our senses are too dull to see subtler realities. Right, just like scientists say, you can't see dark matter, but you know there is dark matter. Make an inference is the only way of explaining certain visible phenomena is to posit that 90% of the universe is dark matter, and some of you will know more about that than I. Something to do with the expansion of the universe. But the point I'm making is there are realities that we cannot see, but we sort of know they're there. So the Indian and Buddhist and Jain universe is not that's just this is the visible planet with life and everything else is just dead rocks. No, they may look like that through our telescopes, but actually the universe is vastly inhabited by subtle entities, maybe not perceivable with our gross eyes, maybe entities with subtle types of bodies. And there are also celestial beings that are responsible for cosmological functions, like the shining of the stars, like the sun. There's a celestial being associated with the sun, with the moon, and with all of these, all phenomena. So at the time of Krishna's birth, on the earth, there was a happy abundance of mines, pastures, villages, and towns, all nature, the flowers put on their best show, produce their best flowers. The mines pulled up all their gems and minerals from their bowels, the earth, because if you're the earth, what are you going to offer God? Remember that Krishna in the Gita says, we offer, whatever you have, even if it's just a flower or a fruit or water, you offer it to me. So if you're the Bhumi is the deity associated with the earth. So what can Bhumi offer? Well, she can offer precious minerals from her depths, from the bowels of the earth. So there's a happy abundance of mines, etc. All of this, all of creation is welcoming the Creator. The rivers contain crystal clear water, nice and clear and pure, and the ponds were beautiful with lotuses. Lines of trees offered eulogies with the loud sounds of bees and birds. So all the trees lined up, and within them, the bees are buzzing as pleasantly as they possibly can, creating nice harmonies with the birds. The birds are chirping, the bees are humming, creating this beautiful, after all, the whole point of bhakti is you just offer whatever it is you can, whatever is your skill set. What's your skill set if you're a bee? Give some honey as well, but you buzz. What's your skill set if you're a bird? You tweet as beautifully and harmonically as you can, harmoniously in harmony with other birds. So the fresh breeze blew in the region, nice breeze, right? If you're the breeze, if you're the celestial being, celestial beings have celestial forms and they also have natural forms. So for example, Agni is the god of fire. He's a celestial with his own celestial form, but then he takes the form of fire as well. And all fire. So celestials are extremely powerful beings and they can be manifested in multiple places. So they're not liberated, remember, they're just beings that with good karma that have these powerful positions. We have that if you think about our world, you have, let's say, a US senator or a president has incredible power, and then compare that to the ant there's practically no power or blade of grass. But inside both is the same Atman. So if it's true that wherever there's life, there's an Atman, if we accept that, or if we're willing to consider that as a possibility, then an Atman in the blade of grass and the Atman in the United States the president is vastly different in terms of their access to resources, in terms of the power they can exert. So if that's the case, then the Indian tradition says, well, extend that. And they propose that there are celestial beings whose power is as greater than ours as the US president's power is to a blade of grass. So they can control natural phenomenon like the sun and the moon. So we can accept it or not accept it, but there's a coherence to it, there's a logic to it. It's not just primitive thinking. There is, if you enter into that line of thinking, it's coherent, it's internally consistent with the notion that wherever there's life, there is an Atman. And that's a notion that has never been disproved. Science has not disproved it. And therefore it remains a viable possibility that wherever there's life, there's a non-material substance. Call it a soul, call it an Atman, call it whatever you will, but it's a different sort of thing. So therefore the life in a blade of grass, the life in the president of the country, that life force is the same. But because of karma, the bodies are different and the access to power and the exertion of power is just different. Okay, so where were we? So the fresh breeze blew. So there's a celestial behind the fresh breeze. Pleasing the senses, just right, just the right temperature. Sometimes you go for a walk and it's just the most perfect breeze. So all nature is presenting itself as perfectly as it possibly can to welcome Krishna into the universe. Just like if you go to a Hindu temple, ladies put on their best saris. Some of you are from South Asia. Maybe your parents go to the temple. Your mom will put on a nice sari. If you're Christians, you go to mass perhaps, or Christmas mass. Typically, maybe not so much nowadays, you put on your best clothes. So what if you're nature? What if you're the breeze? What if you're a flower? It's the same principle. You put on your very best show for this special occasion. So fresh breeze blew in the region, pleasing the senses and bearing pleasant scents. So breeze can not only be lovely and cooling, but can also bear scents from the flowers. And the sacred fires of the brāhmanas blazed forth undisturbed. If you're a brahmana and that's your dharma, your family duty, so you chant your mantras in your best possible melody and you welcome God through your dharma. Remember what Krishna says in the Gita, you read the verse, Yat karosi, yadashna, whatever you do, whatever you eat, offer that to me. So the Brahmins are offering up the sacred flowers, the birds are offering up their cooing, all of it, welcoming Krishna's arrival into the universe. The minds of the ascetics and the celestials were peaceful, and kettle drums resounded in unison at the moment of birth of the unborn one. The text loves this play of words, the birth of the unborn one. Why unborn? Because God is unborn. He's not trapped by karma like we take birth because we're trapped by karma. We die and we have a lot of karma. We didn't fit into this life. We have to come back and take another birth. So we're born, but Ishwar is not like that. There's no karma. He's beyond karma. He's beyond all that. But nonetheless, Ishwar is taking birth, appearing to take birth like a normal mortal. Our free will. So these are all celestials now. The kinnaras and the gandharvas burst into song. They're wonderful singers, celestial singers, angelic. They're angels, basically, very similar to Christian angels. The siddhas and charanas offered prayers, and the vidyadharas joyfully danced with the apsarās. So all the celestials, some of them specialize in music, some in dance, some in instrumentation, and they're all putting together their best performances to welcome Krishna into the universe. The sages and demigods overflowing with happiness. God is incarnating. What if you're a sage? What could be a more auspicious thing than that? They showered flowers. And even the clouds rumbled gently, resonating with the ocean. So the clouds are rumbling and making harmony with the ocean's waves. How cool is that? They've got a little orchestration going on. It's like the birds and the bees have. The clouds and the ocean say, okay, let's get together and make a nice melody. Beautiful, peaceful, beautiful, nice, deep, resounding sound of the waves and the clouds. This is how else are you going to welcome Krishna if you're a cloud? What are your options? You can rain a little bit if Krishna's a little, if he needs, if you feel a little moisture would be a nice addition. that's pretty much it. You rumble. So at midnight, when deep darkness had fallen, Janardana Krishna was born. Viṣṇu, who dwells in the heart of everyone, appeared in Devakī. That's his mother, not his real mother, I mean, just his mother in this. Now, we need to know the term Leela. Leela is when God incarnates just to exchange in love with his devotees. He comes to please his devotees, especially in the early part of Krishna's life. And in the later part, he also comes to kill the demons that are, the world is, actually he was requested to incarnate because demoniac entities that were so powerful that they could not be resisted had taken birth amongst the kings of India, and even the celestials couldn't resist them. And so Viṣṇu was requested by Brahma, the chief celestial, to incarnate and to eliminate these demons that were causing havoc. But in the early part of Krishna's incarnation, he doesn't do any of that killing of demons. He just comes to give us a chance to see, what does love of God look like? What does love of God look like in the Krishna tradition? And he comes and exchanges in these loving, and that's not going to be today's class, but the last two classes. What is love of God, this Ishvara that we've spoken so much about in all these different ways that we've engaged Ishvara through debate, through scripture, through yoga? What is that ultimately? What does a relationship with that Ishvara do to your mind? What states of mind come from devotion to Ishvara? Okay, so then he appears in Devakī, his mother, who resembled a goddess, right? She's carrying God in her womb, like the full moon appearing in the eastern direction. So she was so effulgent, because Krishna's in her womb, she appears like a full moon. The father Vasudeva, husband of Devakī, saw that amazing lotus-eyed child. He immediately comes out with 4 arms. Viṣṇu has 4 arms, Krishna has 2. So he appears first as Viṣṇu, his 4 arms wielding the weapons of the conch, club, lotus, and disc. So Viṣṇu has 4 arms, in each of which he carries a different thing. A conch for the devotees, club for the demons, lotus for the devotees, and discus for the demons. The discus is a weapon. And you recognize the signs of Viṣṇu. He bore the mark of a śrīvatsa. On his chest, he has a little tuft of hair. Viṣṇu, why not? Viṣṇu is entitled to do anything he wants. If you're God, you don't have to. You can create your own aesthetics of your own form. You create any form you want, infinity of forms, and you create whatever aesthetics you want surrounding that form. So he bore the mark of śrīvatsa, and the kaustubha jewel was radiant on his neck. So Viṣṇu has this jewel. If you look at any, from now on, if you look at a picture of Krishna or Viṣṇu and you pay attention, if it's 4-armed Viṣṇu, then you'll see a conch, a club, a lotus, and discus. Always a yellow dhoti garment. And if you look carefully, you'll see a kaustubha necklace of some sort with a gem at his neck. Clad in a yellow garment, always yellow, he appeared beautiful as a dark rain cloud. Krishna, by the way, means black. And the different names of Krishna, like Shama Sundara, it's beautiful black. Even though now in pop art, popular culture, they're making him whiter and whiter, they're Caucasianizing him. In actual fact, he's black. And the very word Krishna in Sanskrit, we've got the word Krishna in Sanskrit, says black. So he was resplendent with a magnificent belt and his arm and wrist bracelets. He comes fully with his beautiful divine paraphernalia and jewelry and ornamentation, which are not made of matter like ours, a divine jewelry, if you will. And his profuse locks were encircled with a lustrous helmet and earrings made of valuable Vaidurya gems. So he has a helmet, and so you always see a picture of Viṣṇu with a helmet of some sort and gems. Upon seeing his son, of course, he's not really his son because God doesn't really have a father, but he appears to be taking birth out of Devakī. So Devaki's husband, Krishna's father, Vasudeva, was overwhelmed by the auspicious occasion of Krishna's incarnation. His eyes were wide with amazement. By the way, they've been imprisoned in jail, the 2 parents, because Devaki's brother, the evil king Kaṁsa, has heard a prophecy that his sister child, the 8th child, will kill him. So he's imprisoned his sister. And each of the 8 children that were born, the 7 children, well, 6 of them really, that were born before Krishna, he slaughtered them. The 7th was transferred to the womb of another person, of Rohiṇī in Vrindavan, and it appeared to the world that it was a miscarriage, but really it wasn't a miscarriage. It was transferred to the womb of someone else that we'll talk about later. 6 slaughtered, 1 was transferred, so that's 7, and Krishna's the 8th child. So they're in jail, because Kaṁsa's waiting for this birth, so he could He wants to kill the eighth child, Krishna, just as he killed the first six. So, overcome with joy, he bestowed 10,000 cows on the brāhmanas. And then, of course, you could say, well, how could he bestow 10,000 cows if he's in jail? And then you read the commentaries and they'll tell you he did in his mind. Because he was chained up, he couldn't do it in real life. So in his mind, he bestowed 10,000 cows. Vasudeva understood that this was the supreme being illuminating the birth chamber with his radiance. He understood this is God. Oh, Parikshit, so remember the king, 7 days to live, right? That's Parikshit. And Shuka's recounting the story. So the father Vasudeva realized, Parikshit descended of Brahman. Realizing his majesty, Vasudeva's fear was dispelled. His fear of Kaṁsa, the evil king that killed his 6 children right in front of him, smashed him on a slab of stone. He was such a brute. Now he had no fear. He could say, this is God that's just taken birth. He praised Krishna with body bowed. Namaha, 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 namaha. Hands joined in supplication and concentrated mind. And now Vasudeva says, it is clear you are Bhagavan, God himself. You are this Ishvara, this Brahman of the Upanishads, the supreme being beyond the material world. You are a transcendent being. You are the knower of the minds of everyone. And what is your form? Is it made of flesh and blood like ours? No, your form is pure bliss and majesty. It was you in the beginning who created this world. Remember, there's all the discussion about creation and a product needs a producer and all the nyayas have to, the nyayas can't start talking about Krishna when they're debating Buddhists because the Buddhists will laugh at them and say, we don't even accept a creator in the first place. Or to speak of a Krishna, one with 4 arms. So if you're debating a Buddhist, there's no point talking about 4-armed Viṣṇu. First of all, you've got to establish that there is a creator. So you just use the language of Ishvara. You're not saying anything about the forms or qualities or any further detail. Remember the Upanishads, the 5th verse, that Brahman is Janmadhyasya Yataha, is the source of everything, Ikshateya, but it's intelligent. So all the Upanishads, so Vedanta just simply wants to establish that Brahman is an intelligent entity, and Nyaya just tries to establish that it is, and you need an intelligent entity in order to explain how creation can take place, because a product like this cannot just randomly, atoms and forces just kind of accidentally come together in this wondrous world. There needs to be a designer. That's all as far as they go when they're debating Buddhists and Jains. But those same people, the same Vedantins, the same Nyaya, in their private life, they may be devotees of Krishna, devotees of Shiva. They may love to read these stories. In their professional life, they have to be, just like in our philosophy departments here at Rutgers or anywhere else. You can't start talking about Jesus Christ or the Bible in the philosophy department. But you can say that, you can say same things, that there must be intelligence behind creation. You can make a philosophical case for that. Or, that consciousness is a distinct sort of thing than any known material substance. You can make a case for that. You can't start talking about soul because that's bringing in Christian language, but you can use the language appropriate to philosophy. But now though anyone reading this is a bhakti. You don't need to prove to them that there's an Ishvara. They've already done that work. But still, Vasudeva says, it was you in the beginning who created this world, comprising of the 3 guna qualities, sattva, rajas, and tamas, out of your own nature. Remember the metaphor of the spider in the Upanishads? Was it the Chandogya? The Brihad? Then, although not actually entering into it, you nonetheless make it seem you've entered it, right? I mean, how can the universe emanates from God, so God is beyond it, but it appears that he enters in. He doesn't really enter in because it emanates from him. It's an extension of him. So, and this is called Leela. God just playfully enters into his own creation. Remember the Gita? Whenever there's a decline of dharma. Yata yadari dharmasya glanir bhavati parata vyuttanam dharmasya tadatmanam sujamyam. I come whenever dharma declines. All right. And he says, look, it's like these material elements. Although full of potency, they do not produce form when existing separately. Yet when they combine and interact together, they produce the manifold universe with all its forms. They appear to enter this world. Well, actually, this is not the case since they existed beforehand. So the subatomic particles, they all existed before creation, and then they come together and they create. And it looks like they've entered into the world, but really they existed beforehand. It's not a great example, but that's what he's saying. In the same way, you exist along with the gunas, the sattva, rajas, tamas. These can be perceived by their characteristics. Remember, sattva is peacefulness, detachment. Rajas is energy. Tamas is stillness, lethargy. They can be perceived by their characteristics, which are recognizable by the intelligent. The intelligent, you recognize when something is rajasic, or when you yourself are in a state of rajas, and you're all full of desires, miserable and unhappy because of all the desires that you have overwhelming your mind. When you're peaceful, free of desires, when you're lazy or depressed, with intelligence you could perceive it. You have, however, cannot be perceived by the gunas, right? We can't see God with our senses, which are made of the gunas. Our eyes are made of the gunas, so the gunas cannot perceive that which is subtler than them. So therefore, the human body with its instruments and its mental and its intellectual ability cannot capture God. God is more subtle. Okay, so you, however, cannot be perceived by the gunas due to being concealed. You're covered like the sun is covered by the cloud. You might not think there is a sun in the cloud today, but it's covered by the clouds. There is no inside and outside of you. You are the universal soul of everything and the essence of the soul. It's a Brahman. Remember, Brahman pervades everything, but also manifests the individual souls. So therefore, you are the universal soul of everything because you are Brahman. Krishna is Brahman. Remember, Brahman, Ishvara, Bhagavan, they all combine into Krishna. All of those different names that we find with their different functions and different stress that we found in the earlier texts, Brahman, Ishvara, they all are Krishna. Krishna lays claim to all of those. Just like we have things like the Almighty, the Lord, and so forth. They all are combined into the notion of God in the Christian tradition. And you're the essence of the soul, because remember, the soul is Brahman, it's made of Brahman. 19. O all-pervading Lord, they say that the origin, maintenance, and destruction of this world, remember the second sutra, they say, who says that? Vedanta, what does Vedanta say? Second sutra, Janmadhyasya yataha, Brahman is that from which comes the creation, maintenance, and dissolution of the universe. So they say that the origin, maintenance, and destruction of the world is from you, the Upanishads say, Vedantins say. Yet you do not exert efforts. You don't have to work to do all that. It's an act of will. You're devoid of the gunas. You're beyond the gunas. You're not subject to sattva, rajas, and tamas. And you're not subject to transformation. You never change. You're eternally the supreme being. But this is not contradictory through you. You are Brahman. There we are. The controller, Ishvara. And all this is performed by the gunas under your auspices. All of this creation is all done by the gunas under the will of God. Through your divine potency, you, the Lord, produce from yourself. And then he talks about a white color for the maintenance of the three worlds, like Viṣṇu maintains the universe. Then a red color infused with power for creation, that's Brahma, the celestial, who is empowered by Viṣṇu to create. And then a black color for the dissolution of all creatures from tamas. So in other words, you take these different forms to create and a different form to maintain the universe and a different form to destroy it. And we have the famous Viṣṇu, Brahma, Viṣṇu, and Shiva. O Lord of everything and omnipresent one, desiring to protect this world, you have incarnated in my house. Remember the Gita? Krishna says, whenever the rise of demoniac presences, I incarnate. You will destroy the armies arranged, this is the big Mahabharata war, arranged for battle with millions of demoniac leaders masquerading as kings, right? So all the demons from the other dimensions have, at this particular moment of incarnate, they're losing their battle with the celestials, so they all come down to earth and hide out as kings of India. And that's why the Mahabharata war was orchestrated. Krishna says, all right, I'll come and I'll eradicate them all. And now remember the evil Kaṁsa who killed the first 6 children. He's brother-in-law of Vasudeva, brother of Devakī, Krishna's mother. But when the barbaric Kaṁsa heard that your birth was to be in our house, he murdered all your brothers and born before you. Hearing the reports of your incarnation from his servants, he is rushing here, even now, weapon in hand. Right? So the Kaṁsa is now rushing because he's heard from the servants, oh, a baby's just been born, it's the 8th baby. So Kaṁsa is rushing, wants to kill Krishna. So back to Shuka. Remember, Shuka's the sage, 16-year-old naked. They're sitting on the banks of the Ganga. So he's saying all this to Parikshit. So every so often we go back out and Shuka says this, or Parikshit asks this question. So don't be confused if we go back out to the original setting of this exchange between Shuka and Parikshit. So Shuka says, then Devakī, the mother, seeing this son of hers displaying the characteristics of the Supreme Being, God, went towards him in great astonishment. She was afraid of Kaṁsa. Remember, the husband wasn't. He knew, we don't have to fear anymore because this is God. But the nature of the mother is always to be fearful for the child, even when the child is an adult. This is the love of the mother. She was afraid of Kaṁsa. Sri Devakī said, so this is philosophical, a little bit philosophical, but we're embedded in the story. All right, when we get to the last two sessions, we'll be reading more of the stories of Krishna's delightful childhood activities that generate attraction in the heart of the listener. And that attraction to the stories is called bhakti, is the beginning of bhakti, is the awakening of bhakti in the heart. But here there's still this sort of formality. She says that form which they call Brahman, who calls it Brahman? Well, the Upanishads, which is unmanifest, it's original, it's the light, it's devoid of the gunas, it's unchanged. All this is Upanishadic language. She's saying that which all the Vedanta sages talk in this kind of language, it's pure being, it has no differences, it's all one, undifferentiated, it's devoid of activity because it is everything, is you. You are Viṣṇu himself, the light of the self. The Viṣṇu, Narayana, same thing. Viṣṇu, Narayana, Ishvara, Bhagavan, Brahman, Krishna, all the same. Don't get confused. Brahman was the first term we encountered. Then Ishvara, then Bhagavan in the Gita, Bhagavad Gita. And then Narayana and Viṣṇu, Krishna, they're all the same. They refer to the same supreme being. You might use different names if you want to stress a different characteristic of that being. So just like in the Islamic tradition, you have the 99 names of Allah, and they all refer to some different quality of Allah. And in South India, you have the Viṣṇu Sahasranama, 1,000 names of Viṣṇu, each of them stressing a different quality. So don't be surprised, there's lots of different, even we have different names, right? So you have your formal name on your passport, maybe your boyfriend or girlfriend has a nickname for you, your parents might have another name for you, and so on. So when through the force of time, verse 25, the universe is destroyed at the end of two Purāṇas, huge cosmic periods of time, when the great elements, great atomic, subatomic particles, have entered into their elemental matrix, they've dissolved into their subtle substructures. And when the manifest is withdrawn into the unmanifest, this manifest world is dissolved back into the three gunas. Nothing is manifest, just pure potential energy. In other words, at the end of the universe, your lordship alone remains. You are known as all-inclusive. So God doesn't just get destroyed with the universe. He remains in his transcendent abode. And he's all-inclusive. Everything is in God. O Supreme Spirit and Friend. They say this time factor of Lord Viṣṇu, from the twinkling of an eye to the period of a year, is your activity. Time is simply the will of God. It's simply the movement that moves the universe. Aristotle was all caught up with the prime mover, how to explain movement. So eventually posited there must be a prime mover, and we can call that time, because time is, we determine time by periods of movement. We say something as a day because the earth revolves on its axis, or a year, it revolves around the earth, the sun, and whatever it might be. So we give labels to movement, but it's nothing other than movement. So that movement, that is simply the will of God. So that time factor is your activity. As a result of it, this universe acts. I surrender to you who are that mighty controller, O refuge, right? Mortal beings, fearful of the serpent of mortality, we're all fearful of death. Do not attain fearlessness. How can we be fearless when we can die at any moment, my friends, unless we're deluded? There's always going to be that lingering fear. What will happen to us? What will become of us? Despite escaping to all corners of the world, right? You're rich and you go buy an island somewhere. Right? Some big, super rich people, they say, oh, let me go escape death. I'll buy an island, whatever. Remember, who was that rich man who lived in an insulated house that no germs could enter? He still died. They were escaping to all corners of the world. But they don't attain fearlessness. Their fear increases. The more you try to resist death, the more you're fearful of it, the more you're thinking about it. But now, after serendipitously, meaning by good fortune, obtaining your lotus feet, going to be a lot of talk of lotus feet in just a sign of beauty. Lotus is the most beautiful thing known to the poetic imagination of ancient India. So Krishna has beautiful lotus eyes, lotus feet, lotus hands. Get used to it because it's going to be all over the place. But now they can sleep peacefully, right? Those who take shelter of God, if they obtain your lotus feet, death escapes from them. That even if their body dies and they go to, but their minds are connected to God, they go to God. You are He, the Lord. You are that Ishvara. You are Brahman. Protect us from Kaṁsa, right? Her brother, the fearsome son of Ugrasena, their father. We are terrified. She's not terrified about herself. She's just terrified as a mother that even though she knows he's God, her maternal instinct is so strong that it overwhelms her knowledge of who God is. But such is the love of the mother. So that she's terrified that Kaṁsa is going to try to kill him, even though a part of her knows Krishna can never be killed. But still, she's not thinking that way. She's just thinking he's a son, like any mother would. Do not reveal this form as the supreme being, the object of meditation to ordinary sight. You're saying, hide your form. It's God, you've got 4 arms, with all his divine ornamentation. Hide it. Kaṁsa's going to come. When he sees you like that, he's going to kill you. Let that simple one not know about your birth in me, oh Madhusudana. There's going to be lots of names for Krishna. I often put it in brackets. My mind is disturbed and I'm trembling with fear of Kaṁsa on account of you. She's not afraid of Kaṁsa on account of her, on account of Krishna. O Lord of the universe, withdraw that transcendental form. Take a form as a baby. Don't show this Viṣṇu form with 4 arms that was described previously, right? The club. Withdraw that transcendental form. It has 4 arms. It is adorned with the splendor of lotus, club, disc, and conch. That supreme person who, at the appropriate occasion at the end of Brahma's night, bears this entire universe with his own body. In other words, at the point of creation, the whole universe goes within the body of God. Viṣṇu, one form of Viṣṇu. That wonderful being is your lordship. It's you. You're the creator. The same person who's entered my womb. She's like, how is this possible? God Almighty, from whom the whole universe creation emanates. He's entered into my womb. How wonderful is all this imitation of the human ways of the world? She understands you're not really being born. It's it's an imitation of our human ways. So then Krishna says, Sri Bhagavan said, and Krishna tells his mother who she was in a past life. In a previous creation, during the era of Swayambhuva Manu, a previous world age, you were Prishni, O chaste lady. And this Vasudeva, the father, was a faultless Prajapati called Suktapa, one who does a lot of tapas, austerity. So this is how they got to be his parents in this birth. In this life, as in the previous life, they were these amazing yogis and yogini. She was a yogini. Here's what she did. After you were both instructed by Brahma in the creation of progeny, they were told to beget a child. You restrained your senses and underwent extreme ascetic practices. You did tapas, you controlled your senses and engaged in extreme discipline. You endured the various features of the seasons, hot, cold, sunshine, wind, and rain. Intense austerity. The impurities of your minds were removed by breath control, pranayama. By slowing down the breath, you freed the mind from all its impurities, means desires, and so forth. You endeavored to worship me, desiring benedictions from me. Your minds appeased by a diet of wind and fallen leaves. That's all they ate. They were so intent on fixing the mind on God that they didn't eat. They just ate leaves in the forest and breathed air. That's how they nourished themselves. In this way, absorbed in me and performing extreme and very arduous disciplines. This is extreme, right? Just eating leaves and air. 10,000 divine years they did this for. They weren't in this realm, they're in some other realm doing this. Then, fully satisfied with your continual austerity, your faith, your devotion, I manifested in your heart in this form. As a result of that intense meditation, Krishna appeared to them in their hearts and said, pick a boon. Being asked to choose a boon, right? You did this 10,000 years, intense austerity, fixing the mind of God. Then God appears and says, okay, what do you want? I'll give you a form. You've attracted my attention, and I will give you a form, meaning any wish. And what are they going to ask for? God. Are they going to ask for some mundane thing? No, you requested a son like me. Well, who's like God? No one's like God. So Krishna says, all right, so nothing like me, so therefore I became your son. And that's why Devakī and Vasudeva are his apparent parents in this life. Because in the past life, they did this amazing discipline, austerity, and then when asked for a boon, asked for a wish, and their austerity, not just austerity, they're fixing the mind on God. They weren't just doing just random austerity. Fixing the mind of God, they wanted something from God. So God eventually appears and says, just like people pray to God, but they were intensely meditating, focused on God. God said, okay, here I am. What do you want? And they said, we want you. We're really a son like you. So I, the Lord of boon givers, I become manifest out of a desire to satisfy your desire. This is God satisfying his devotees. So they pleased God. They obviously were so sincere. They gave everything up just to seek God, sat in the forest 10,000 years, just breathing and eating leaves to sustain their body so they could continue meditating. No other desire, no other activity. So God comes and says, okay, what do you mean you want? I now, you've captured my heart, I will do whatever you please. So then they said, we want you as a son. You were childless as husband and wife, and you hadn't indulged in sexual intercourse. They didn't have sex. They were just two yogis. They were yogis in the forest, just male and female bodies doing it together, their practices. Deluded by my divine Maya, you did not choose liberation. They didn't even ask for liberation. They just wanted God. This is a big theme of the Bhagavatam. Even liberation is rejected because God is infinitely more satisfying than just liberation of the Atma, just being immersed in the pure consciousness of the Atma. After I departed, you received the blessing of a son, such as me. Having fulfilled your heart's desire, you enjoyed the pleasures of sexual intercourse. So then they gave up their practices and they engaged in normal husband-wife sexual activity. But so the boom was, we want a son like you. So not finding anyone else in the world who was my equal in the qualities of magnanimity and virtue, I became your son. There wasn't anyone like God, so I became your son, known as Kṛṣṇa Garbha, born of Kṛṣṇa. So he was their son in the past birth. This is all the past life. And then as Upendra, I was again born from both of them. That is you both, of Kashyapa in the womb of Atiti. Now the second life, so he was their son, so 3 lives ago. The first story about them eating leaves and breathing air was 3 lives ago, and he became their son. And then the next life after that, he again became their son. And that time, as Upendra, a different incarnation. And the father was Kashyapa, Vasudeva, and Devakī was Aditi. And this is the dwarf incarnation, and I became known as Vamana. So now is the 3rd time that he's their son. Okay, do you see? So he says, I've been your son 3 times in 3 past lives. First one when you did the 10,000 years of austerity. Then the second time he doesn't say very much at all, just this one verse here. But he was Upendra, and the couple now changed their names. They're now known as Kashyapa and Aditi, right? The first life of the 3. You were, where are we? You were Prishni, the mother was Prishni, and Vasudeva, the 3rd life father. So the first life is Prishni and Sutapa, husband and wife, husband Sutapa, Prishni, that was the first of the 3 lives. The second, Kashyapa, is the father, and Aditi is the mother. And now in this life, Devakī and Vasudeva. Vasudeva is the father, Devakī. You don't have to know all that for the quiz or anything like that. I'm just helping you read the text. In this 3rd appearance, right now, right, he's just been born now, I have now again taken birth from you both through that same form of Viṣṇu. I've stated the facts, O chaste lady. That's it. That's the story. This form was shown to you. Why did he come as 4 form? To remind you of my previous birth. Otherwise, because of my appearance as a mortal, knowledge of my real nature would not arise. If I came in my 2-armed form, you wouldn't know who I was. The rest of the story, Krishna's going to have 2 arms. But but he appears in his forearm form to remind them that this is the third time you've been my parents. And I'm God. And that's why I appear as God. And here's the story of your the past two incarnations when you were my parents. Now is the third. And I just wanted you to know all that. So that's so both of you constantly thinking affectionately of me. In my nature is Brahman. This is Brahman. We've said that many, many times. As well as in my nature as a son, will attain my supreme destination. This time you will be, we won't have to, we're not going to have a fourth round. After this life, you'll come to my divine abode of Goloka and we'll live together eternally in the spiritual realm. After speaking in this way, Lord Hari, Krishna, fell silent and immediately changed into an ordinary child through his Yoga Maya power of illusion. While his parents were watching, we need to know this Yoga Maya, my friends. This is the power that Krishna manifests over his devotees so they don't know he's God, to allow intimacy. Because if you know he's God, it creates distance and formality. Notice how his mother, when he was born, she was all formal. Not like a normal mother, pick up your child and you nurse him and you, She wasn't like that. She was, oh, you are Brahman, you are There was a little bit of, there was a lot of distance there, perhaps even a bit of fear. You know, when God displays majesty, there's fear. Remember the 11th book of the Bhagavatam. So because God wants love, you can only have love if there's no fear. And therefore you have to cover your majesty. And that's called Yoga Maya, is the power by which Krishna exerts over his bhaktas to cover his majesty. So they just think he's a normal child or a normal friend, as we'll see in the next stories. All right, so therefore he turns into a normal child. Then Vasudeva, the father, son of Sura, removed his son from the room of the birth as he had been directed by the Lord. Right, so then just at the time that he wanted to leave, Yogamaya was born to the wife of Nanda. So they are in jail. The two parents, Vasudeva and Devakī, with the new Krishna born, are in a city called Mathurā, still there in India today, holy city. On the other side of the river, there's Vrindavan, one of the most sacred places in India today. And at the same time that Krishna was born, another child was born over there with different parents. Who were their parents? Nanda and Yashoda, okay? And they're going to get switched. So even though Krishna's really the child of course, he's God, he's no one's child. But, when he's in this sort of play, this drama of being a human, his actual parents are Devakī and Vasudeva. He's going to get switched with the child that was born to Nanda and Yashoda. And Nanda and Yashoda don't know. They think Krishna's their child. They don't know he's been switched. So he grows up with Nanda and Yashoda, and they're kind of like his parents, but they're actually Devakī and Vasudeva are the real parents. Keep that in mind. Okay? So, just at the time that he wanted to leave, Yogamaya, this little girl, who's really the goddess Durga, disguised as a female child, she was born to the wife of Nanda. So Nanda and Yashoda in Vraj, Vrindavan. Remember that word, because our next stories are going to be in Vraj, also known as Vrindavan. Devakī Vasudeva in Mathurā, big city. Kaṁsa's the evil king. And the simple cow herding community called Vraj with Nanda and Yashoda. And the two children are going to get switched because Krishna told his father to do that. So Vasudeva approached carrying Krishna, and even though he's in chains and everything is locked by his power, by the power of Yoga, all the entrances which had been securely shut with huge doors and iron bolts and chains opened of their own accord through Yogamaya's influence. So Yogamaya is Krishna's power that allows him to do whatever he wants, especially when it comes to exchanging loving relationships with his bhaktas. Just as darkness disappears before the sun, all the gates open, the chains fell off, all the guards fell asleep by the influence of Yogamaya. Meanwhile, all the doorkeepers and citizens slept, their consciousness and all their functions overcome by sleep. The clouds, rumbling mildly, showered rain. Just that was their service. They were just glorifying the newborn child. Shesha followed, warding off the water with his hoods, while Indra, the celestial, was pouring down rain incessantly, the Yamuna River, younger sister of Yama, Lord of Death, foaming with the force of waves from its massive deep water, became agitated with hundreds of fearful whirlpools. But she gave passage. So Vasudeva is carrying the baby. Even though it's a stormy night and the Yamuna River is wild, she parted and gave a passageway to Vasudeva to carry Krishna over to Vrindavan, where he's going to switch the children. He's going to put Krishna down on the bed of Yashoda, pick up the baby girl and bring her back, take her to the jail. Okay? So, there we are. And we're almost there. On reaching Nanda's Vraj on the other side of the Yamuna River, Vasudeva found all the cowherd men. That's a simple little cowherding community. Vasudeva was in the big royal city of Mathurā, but he found all the cowherd men fast asleep. Putting his son down on Yashoda's bed and picking up her daughter, he returned home. He switches the baby, puts Krishna down on Yashoda's bed. She doesn't know. She's fast asleep. When she wakes up, she thinks she's given birth to Krishna. She had, in fact, given birth to a little girl. And Vasudeva switches them. So remember, Kaṁsa's going to kill the 8th child. We won't read that story. But when Kaṁsa comes in the morning to kill the 8th child, which is now the girl, it's Durga. So and then from the little baby, all of a sudden, she springs up in a 8-armed or 16-armed form. There's a goddess and freaks him out and says, "You fool, that child has already been born." And then flies up to her divine abode. So that's what's going on. Now, Vasudeva then comes back, put the infant girl down on the bed of Devakī, his wife, who had just given birth to Krishna, refastened his leg shackles, and remained as he was before. Afterwards, Yashoda, this is in Vrindavan on the other side of the river, Nanda's wife, aware of the birth, but exhausted, with a memory stolen by sleep, couldn't recall the gender of the child. So she didn't know that she'd given birth to a girl. She woke up, Krishna was there in her arms, and she thinks that she's just given birth to little Krishna. It's a bit complicated. But I just wanted to read the birth story of Krishna. Okay, and we have, I believe, 2 more sessions. Or it could be 3, but anyway, I think it's 2. And we'll read now the next, when we meet next, we'll jump a few years and we'll see Krishna as a little child, little toddler, still crawling about, but not a baby anymore. And we'll see how we like that. Okay, my friends, I got a bit of a sore throat, so I'm going to let you go. I think we've more or less done our hour and 20 minutes, an hour and 13 minutes. That's as much as I can do right now. And we'll see you soon. See you in a couple of days.